Imagine if you could live a life where external events, other people's opinions, and the world's chaos no longer controlled your emotions. What if, instead, you learned to remain unmoved, calm, and collected no matter what life threw at you? This is the power of indifference, a concept central to Stoicism and famously taught by Marcus Aurelius. In today's video, we'll explore 15 powerful situations where practicing indifference can change your life for the better. Indifference to criticism. One of the most common struggles people face in life is dealing with criticism. Whether it's from friends, family, co-workers, or even strangers, criticism can be hard to handle. It has the potential to damage our self-esteem and shift our perspective on ourselves. But Marcus Aurelius, in his writings, emphasizes that criticism should not affect our inner peace. He teaches us that how others view us is beyond our control, and, therefore, their opinions should not dictate our emotions. What does indifference to criticism mean? Indifference to criticism doesn't mean that we become indifferent to feedback. On the contrary, constructive criticism can help us grow. But we must learn to distinguish between feedback that is meant to help us and criticism that comes from a place of judgment, jealousy, or misunderstanding. Indifference here refers to detaching our self-worth from others' negative opinions. When we take criticism personally, it often leads to self-doubt, stress, and even anger. We start internalizing the belief that we are not good enough or that we need to change to fit someone else's standards. But when we practice indifference, we realize that their opinion is simply their perspective, and it does not define who we are. How can we apply this? Consider a situation at work where a colleague criticizes your performance. If you internalize it, you may start feeling insecure or anxious about your work. However, if you approach the situation with indifference, you don't let the criticism affect your peace of mind. Instead, you pause and ask yourself, is this feedback something that can help me grow? Or is this simply a projection of their own frustrations? By asking this, you can objectively decide whether to learn from the critique or ignore it. The key here is maintaining emotional control and not allowing external opinions to influence how you feel about yourself. Why is this important? By practicing indifference to criticism, we stop living for the approval of others. We understand that our value doesn't depend on someone else's judgment, and we stop seeking validation from external sources. We become more self-reliant, more confident in our own abilities, and less susceptible to self-doubt. Moreover, when we stop worrying about criticism, we free up mental and emotional energy to focus on self-improvement and achieving our goals. We learn that our peace of mind is more important than any negative comment or judgment from others. This is how we align with Marcus Aurelius' wisdom, to focus on what is within our control and to let go of everything else. In practice, when a negative comment or critique comes your way, don't react impulsively. Take a deep breath and assess whether the criticism is constructive. Don't take personal offense. Recognize that their opinion is theirs to hold, and it doesn't reflect your true worth. Build a strong sense of self-awareness and confidence that comes from within, so external judgment can't affect your peace. By practicing indifference to criticism, we gain the ability to remain grounded, focused, and unaffected by the fluctuations of others' opinions, paving the way for a more authentic, peaceful, and fulfilling life. Indifference to failure. Failure is something everyone experiences in life, but it's how we respond to failure that shapes our future. Most people see failure as a negative event, something to be avoided at all costs, and something that signifies personal inadequacy. However, Marcus Aurelius teaches us to adopt an indifferent attitude toward failure, not because failure isn't important, but because how we react to failure is what matters most. What does indifference to failure mean? Indifference to failure means viewing setbacks and mistakes not as reflections of our self-worth or a final judgment of our abilities, but as part of the process of growth and learning. Failure is a natural part of life, and it provides valuable lessons that success cannot teach us. The Stoic perspective on failure is about remaining calm and focused rather than becoming overwhelmed or discouraged by it. When we let failure affect us too deeply, it can lead to negative emotions such as regret, shame, guilt, and even hopelessness. These emotions can paralyze us, making it harder to move forward. But when we practice indifference to failure, we take away the emotional weight attached to it. We stop seeing failure as something to avoid and instead recognize it as a stepping stone towards personal development. How can we apply this? Let's say you've been working on a business project, and it doesn't go as planned. You lose money, time, or resources. If you were to internalize failure, you might feel like a failure yourself, beating yourself up over your mistakes. But if you adopt indifference, you won't let the failure dictate your emotional state. Instead, you'll look at the situation with a clear, logical mind and ask, what can I learn from this? You might learn that a particular strategy didn't work, that a certain aspect of the project needs improvement, or that you need to approach things differently. Failure becomes a valuable teacher, not a punishment. Why is this important? When we stop fearing failure, we free ourselves from the burden of perfectionism and allow ourselves the space to experiment, take risks, and grow. Failure is inevitable in any meaningful pursuit, but how we perceive it will determine whether it holds us back or propels us forward. By being indifferent to failure, we create resilience. We train ourselves to bounce back stronger after each setback, not because we are immune to disappointment, but because we see failure as a temporary condition, not a permanent one. This mindset allows us to keep pushing forward and making progress, no matter how many times we stumble. In practice, when you experience failure, take a step back and reflect on what went wrong, but don't dwell on it. Detach your sense of self-worth from your failures. Understand that failure doesn't define you, it's just a result of one attempt. Use failure as an opportunity to learn, adapt, and improve. See it as a guide that will eventually lead you to success. Avoid self-blame and emotional reactions. Instead, be logical, objective, and focused on the next steps. The freedom in indifference to failure. Adopting indifference to failure doesn't mean that we stop caring about the outcomes or the effort we put into our endeavors. It means that we don't allow failures to crush our spirit or stop us from moving forward. We shift our focus from the fear of failure to the growth that comes from overcoming it, allowing us to live with more freedom, clarity, and peace. By practicing indifference to failure, we change our relationship with setbacks. We stop letting them define our future, and instead, we see them as mere obstacles to be navigated, helping us grow stronger and more resilient in the process. Indifference to pain and suffering. Pain and suffering are unavoidable aspects of the human experience. No one is immune to physical pain, emotional distress, or the inevitable hardships that come with life. However, Stoicism teaches us how to handle pain and suffering with indifference, not by denying or ignoring the pain, but by refusing to let it dominate our lives and dictate our happiness. What does indifference to pain and suffering mean? Indifference to pain and suffering means learning to respond to discomfort, whether physical or emotional, in a way that doesn't undermine our inner peace. Stoics acknowledge that suffering is a natural part of life, but they emphasize that it is not the pain itself that is harmful, it is our reaction to the pain that causes unnecessary suffering. Instead of letting pain consume us, we can practice detachment from the emotional turmoil that often accompanies it. We understand that pain is temporary, and it does not define us or our experience of life. By adopting this attitude, we stop viewing pain as something to fear or avoid, and instead accept it as a natural, transient part of our journey. How can we apply this? Imagine you are going through a tough breakup or experiencing a physical injury. The emotional pain from the breakup might feel overwhelming, and the physical pain of an injury might feel limiting. However, instead of letting the pain control your thoughts and actions, you practice indifference by reminding yourself that pain, though intense, is not permanent. By adopting this Stoic mindset, you focus on the present moment and what you can control, whether it's taking the necessary steps to heal or seeking the support you need. The key is not to resist or deny the pain, but to allow it to pass through you without holding onto it. You acknowledge it, learn from it, and move forward without allowing it to consume your peace of mind. Why is this important? By practicing indifference to pain and suffering, we build resilience. We stop fearing hardship because we understand that it's part of the natural flow of life. This doesn't mean that we become emotionless or uncaring about our challenges. Instead, it means that we develop a healthier relationship with pain, knowing that it does not have to define our experience. This Stoic approach allows us to face difficulties with strength and grace, without becoming overwhelmed by negative emotions. When we can remain calm and centered during tough times, we are better able to navigate challenges and preserve our inner peace, regardless of the external circumstances. In practice, when you experience pain, whether emotional or physical, acknowledge it without judgment. Don't label it as something that shouldn't be happening. Focus on the actions you can take to ease the pain, but avoid dwelling on the discomfort or seeing it as a personal failure. Use pain as an opportunity to practice emotional control and self-compassion. Don't allow it to dictate your responses. Practice mindfulness and acceptance. Remind yourself that pain, like all things, is temporary and will eventually pass. The freedom in indifference to pain and suffering. By embracing indifference to pain and suffering, we free ourselves from the emotional chaos that often accompanies hardship. We realize that pain is not something we need to fight against, but rather something we can endure with strength and dignity. This attitude leads to greater emotional stability and inner peace, allowing us to live life more fully without being constantly at war with our circumstances. Through indifference to suffering, we recognize that our ability to respond to pain with grace and resilience is what truly matters. In this way, we transform pain from something that holds us back into a source of growth and empowerment. Indifference to praise and criticism. In a world that thrives on feedback, it's easy to become overly attached to what others think of us. Praise can lift us up, and criticism can bring us down. However, Marcus Aurelius and Stoicism teach us to develop indifference to praise and criticism, not because we should ignore the value of feedback, but because we should learn to maintain our sense of self-worth independently of what others say about us. What does indifference to praise and criticism mean? Indifference to praise and criticism means not letting external opinions sway our inner peace or self-esteem. Praise may feel good in the moment, but it can also lead to arrogance, complacency, or the pressure to maintain a certain image. Criticism, on the other hand, can cause us to doubt ourselves, feel insecure, or lose confidence. Stoicism teaches that while we should be open to constructive feedback, we should not base our sense of value on the opinions of others. This attitude doesn't imply that we become indifferent to the impact we have on others, nor does it suggest that we ignore genuine constructive criticism. It simply means that we don't let praise go to our heads or let criticism break our spirit. We learn to rely on our internal compass rather than seeking external validation. How can we apply this? Imagine you've worked hard on a project or delivered a presentation. If you receive praise, it can be tempting to bask in it and feel like you've proven your worth. Conversely, if you receive criticism, it might make you question your abilities or feel disheartened. Stoicism teaches us to acknowledge the praise and criticism, but not to let them define us. For example, if you receive praise, you might feel happy for a moment, but remember that your worth isn't dependent on someone else's opinion. If you receive criticism, you can listen and assess it, but not take it personally. Ask yourself if there's something to learn from it, but avoid letting it erode your confidence. Why is this important? By practicing indifference to praise and criticism, we develop emotional resilience. We learn to stay grounded and not get carried away by the highs of praise or the lows of criticism. This helps us maintain self-esteem and self-worth that are not dependent on external validation. We can still be open to feedback and grow from it, but we understand that the opinions of others are just that, opinions, not truths. This Stoic practice also protects us from the harmful effects of seeking constant approval from others. When we stop needing praise to feel good about ourselves, we free ourselves from the pressure to please others or maintain a facade. Instead, we can act according to our values and principles rather than trying to meet others' expectations. In practice, when you receive praise, acknowledge it with gratitude, but don't let it inflate your ego. Remind yourself that it doesn't change your value. When you receive criticism, reflect on it without getting defensive. Use it as a tool for growth, but don't let it dictate your sense of self-worth. Develop a strong internal sense of validation. Focus on your actions, efforts, and integrity rather than seeking approval from others. Remember that praise and criticism are temporary and often based on others' perceptions, not an objective truth about you. The freedom and indifference to praise and criticism. By practicing indifference to praise and criticism, we achieve emotional stability. We stop riding the emotional roller coaster of external opinions and start living from a place of self-assurance. When we base our worth on our inner values and character, we become unshakable, unaffected by the transient nature of praise or the sting of criticism. In this way, we gain the freedom to act authentically, regardless of what others think, and remain at peace with ourselves. We stop allowing external judgments to disrupt our internal harmony, enabling us to live with confidence and integrity. Indifference to material possessions. In a consumer-driven society, the temptation to accumulate wealth and material possessions is ever present. Yet, Stoicism teaches us the power of indifference to material possessions, emphasizing that true wealth lies not in what we own, but in how we view and use what we have. Marcus Aurelius and other Stoics remind us that happiness and fulfillment are not found in material objects, but rather in living virtuously and in accordance with nature. What does indifference to material possessions mean? Indifference to material possessions means recognizing that things are just things, they do not define us or contribute to our true happiness. This mindset does not suggest that we should renounce all material goods or live in deprivation. Instead, it encourages us to appreciate what we have without becoming attached to it or allowing it to dominate our lives. Material possessions should serve a practical purpose and contribute to our well-being, but they should never become the central focus of our existence. By being indifferent to material possessions, we free ourselves from the constant desire for more. We stop measuring our worth by the car we drive, the clothes we wear, or the size of our bank account. Instead, we find fulfillment in the simple things in life, like relationships, personal growth, and inner peace. How can we apply this? Think of the times when you've desired a new phone, a luxury item, or an expensive vacation. While these things might bring temporary joy, they often leave us feeling empty once the novelty fades. Stoicism invites us to practice contentment with what we have, regardless of what others around us may possess. Instead of focusing on acquiring the next big thing, we focus on making the most of what we already have and finding satisfaction in simplicity. For instance, if you desire a new luxury car, ask yourself whether it truly adds value to your life or if it's just a way to impress others. Similarly, if you're constantly chasing a bigger house or a higher-paying job, consider whether your happiness depends on these material gains or if it could be found in other aspects of life, such as personal growth or giving back to others. Why is this important? By practicing indifference to material possessions, we free ourselves from consumerism and the constant cycle of wanting more. We stop comparing ourselves to others who may seem to have more wealth or possessions, and we stop believing that material success equals personal success. This shift in mindset leads to a greater appreciation for the things we already have and the life we've created for ourselves. Furthermore, this practice encourages financial freedom and sustainability. When we stop spending excessively on things we don't need, we are able to focus on more meaningful pursuits, such as learning, growing, and contributing to the well-being of others. In practice, practice gratitude for the material possessions you already have. Take a moment to reflect on how these things have served you and contributed to your life. Avoid the constant desire to accumulate more. When you feel the urge to buy something new, ask yourself if it's necessary or if it's simply a desire driven by external influences. Focus on experiences and relationships rather than things. True wealth is found in the richness of connections and the depth of experiences, not in the quantity of possessions. Develop a mindset of sufficiency. Rather than always striving for more, learn to be content with what is sufficient for your needs. The freedom in indifference to material possessions. By embracing indifference to material possessions, we liberate ourselves from the endless pursuit of things that don't bring lasting happiness. We begin to experience the freedom of contentment, where we are no longer tied down by the desire for more. This Stoic practice allows us to appreciate life as it is, focusing on what truly matters, such as our health, relationships, and inner peace. In this way, we become rich in the things that truly matter: our character, our integrity, and our ability to live virtuously. When we are indifferent to material possessions, we gain the ability to live freely and fully, unconcerned by the need to impress others or to chase after fleeting desires. We learn that true wealth is found not in accumulation, but in living simply and with purpose. Indifference to the past. Many people are burdened by their past, whether it's mistakes they've made, regrets they carry, or experiences that have shaped them. The Stoics, however, encourage us to practice indifference to the past. Marcus Aurelius teaches us that the past is beyond our control, and it is unwise to dwell on things that no longer serve us. We cannot change what has already happened, but we can choose how we respond to it moving forward. What does indifference to the past mean? Indifference to the past does not mean ignoring our history or pretending it doesn't matter. It means not allowing the past to control our present or future. We accept that the past is a collection of events that are already over. We may reflect on it to learn and grow, but we do not let it define us or hold us back. This mindset encourages us to free ourselves from guilt, shame, or regret. Instead of constantly replaying past failures or missed opportunities, we focus on what is in our control, our present actions and future intentions. By accepting the past as it is, we can liberate ourselves from emotional baggage and live more fully in the moment. How can we apply this? Think about a past mistake or regret that still weighs heavily on your mind. Maybe it's a decision you wish you could take back or an opportunity you missed. Instead of allowing these thoughts to consume you, acknowledge them and recognize that they are part of your journey. Learn from them, but don't allow them to define your present or future. For example, if you failed at a business venture in the past, instead of being consumed by the regret, take it as an opportunity for growth and learning. The mistake is part of your story, but it doesn't dictate the direction of your future. What matters is how you respond to it now, and the actions you take today to move forward. Why is this important? Indifference to the past allows us to live in the present moment without being weighed down by old wounds or regrets. When we stop obsessing over what's already happened, we free ourselves to fully embrace the opportunities that lie ahead. This also encourages a sense of personal empowerment. We realize that we are not defined by our past, and we have the power to create the future we desire. Additionally, by practicing indifference to the past, we reduce the emotional turmoil that comes from dwelling on things we can't change. This leads to greater emotional resilience and peace of mind. Instead of living with a sense of regret, we adopt a mindset of growth and possibility. In practice, when thoughts of the past arise, acknowledge them, but don't let them consume your thoughts. Focus on what you can control in the present. Practice self-forgiveness. Understand that everyone makes mistakes, and these mistakes are part of being human. What matters is how you choose to move forward. Let go of any resentment or anger toward people or situations from the past. Holding on to these emotions only keeps you trapped in a cycle of negativity. Reflect on past experiences with a growth mindset. Ask yourself, what can I learn from this, rather than dwelling on the mistakes? The freedom in indifference to the past. By practicing indifference to the past, we free ourselves from the emotional weight of guilt, regret, and resentment. We stop letting past mistakes dictate our future decisions or limit our potential. Instead, we begin to live with greater clarity, focusing on the present and future instead of getting lost in the rearview mirror. This Stoic mindset empowers us to make better decisions today and to embrace the future with confidence. When we let go of the past, we open ourselves to new possibilities and the ability to build a life based on who we are now, not who we were. Indifference to the past becomes a path to greater emotional freedom and inner peace, allowing us to live without the constant shadow of regret or nostalgia. Indifference to the future. In our fast-paced world, it's easy to get caught up in anxiety about the future, wondering about what could go wrong, planning for worst-case scenarios, or worrying about events that may never happen. Stoicism teaches us to embrace indifference to the future. While planning and setting goals are important, we must recognize that the future is uncertain, and our worrying about it only takes us away from the present moment. What does indifference to the future mean? Indifference to the future does not mean that we become passive or stop planning for the future. It simply means that we acknowledge the uncertainty of life and stop letting fear or anxiety about the future dominate our thoughts. Instead of worrying about what might happen, we focus on what we can do today to create the future we desire. We live fully in the present moment while making decisions that align with our values and goals. This mindset encourages us to release control over outcomes and focus on the process. We cannot predict the future, but we can choose how we approach each day. By practicing indifference to the future, we allow ourselves to experience life more fully without the burden of future anxiety. How can we apply this? Think about how much time you spend worrying about future events, whether it's your career, finances, relationships, or personal growth. While planning for the future is important, excessive worry about what might go wrong can prevent us from fully engaging with the present. For example, if you are anxious about a job interview, instead of focusing on the potential negative outcome, focus on the present moment. Prepare to the best of your ability, but recognize that the future outcome is beyond your control. By releasing the need to control everything, you'll be more relaxed and effective in the present. Why is this important? Indifference to the future helps us reduce anxiety and increase emotional resilience. By stopping excessive worry and focusing on the present, we are more likely to make decisions that are aligned with our values rather than acting out of fear. This also leads to greater mental clarity because we stop juggling multiple possible future scenarios in our heads. When we let go of the burden of the unknown, we experience more freedom and peace of mind. Instead of being trapped in a cycle of anxious thoughts, we are better able to act with purpose and intentionality in the here and now. In practice, practice mindfulness to stay present in the moment. When your mind starts wandering to the future, gently bring your focus back to the current task. Set clear goals for the future, but don't let them consume you. Break large goals into manageable steps and focus on what you can do today to move forward. When you feel anxious about the future, remind yourself that worrying doesn't change the outcome. Focus on what you can control in the present, and trust that you are taking the right steps toward your future. Embrace the uncertainty of life. Understand that unexpected challenges and opportunities will arise, but you are capable of adapting and responding with resilience. The freedom in indifference to the future. By practicing indifference to the future, we release the emotional burden of uncertainty and worry. We stop feeling overwhelmed by what may or may not happen and start embracing life as it unfolds. This allows us to make decisions based on what we value most, rather than what we fear. When we let go of the need to control the future, we become more flexible, resilient, and open to new opportunities. Instead of being paralyzed by fear or anxiety, we take meaningful action today to shape the future, but without being consumed by it. This creates a sense of peace and calm, as we trust that life will unfold as it should and that we are capable of handling whatever comes our way. Indifference to others' opinions. One of the most powerful teachings of Stoicism is the importance of being indifferent to others' opinions. In today's world, where social media, peer pressure, and societal expectations can heavily influence us, the Stoics encourage us to free ourselves from the need for external validation. Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus both stress that other people's judgments should not control our sense of self-worth or the choices we make. What does indifference to others' opinions mean? Indifference to others' opinions means not letting the views or judgments of others dictate our actions, decisions, or self-esteem. While feedback can be useful, our happiness and self-worth should not be tied to what others think about us. Stoicism teaches us that we should live according to our own values, principles, and goals, not based on the approval or disapproval of others. This doesn't mean we should ignore others or become rude, rather, it means we should practice emotional independence. We should act in alignment with our values, regardless of how others might perceive us. It is important to remember that people's opinions are often fleeting, and basing our decisions on their perceptions can lead us to live inauthentically or in a constant state of self-doubt. How can we apply this? Imagine a situation where you are hesitant to speak up in a meeting because you fear others might judge your ideas. Alternatively, you might worry about wearing a certain outfit because you're concerned about what others will think of your appearance. Stoicism encourages us to recognize that our worth is not defined by external judgments. By practicing indifference to others' opinions, we become more confident in our own decisions and more authentic in our actions. For instance, if you have a dream or goal that others may find unrealistic or impractical, instead of being discouraged by their opinions, trust your judgment and pursue your ambitions. External criticism can often stem from fear or insecurity in others, and it doesn't necessarily reflect the truth about your abilities or potential. Why is this important? Indifference to others' opinions enables us to live more authentically. When we stop seeking validation from others, we make decisions that are aligned with our true selves rather than what others expect from us. This leads to greater self-confidence and a stronger sense of inner peace as we stop living in constant fear of judgment. By letting go of the need for approval, we also stop people-pleasing and become more resilient in the face of criticism. Instead of feeling defeated by others' negative feedback, we remain focused on our own path and continue to grow in alignment with our values. In practice, take note of situations where you seek others' approval. Are there specific areas of your life where you care too much about what others think? Reflect on how you can start to release this attachment. Practice self-affirmation. Remind yourself regularly that your worth is not based on others' opinions, but on the person you choose to be. Limit exposure to sources that fuel your need for external validation, such as social media. Focus on environments that encourage growth and authenticity. When you receive criticism, thank the person for their feedback, but don't let it affect your self-worth. Evaluate the criticism, but make sure your decisions are based on your inner values, not the approval of others. The freedom in indifference to others' opinions. By embracing indifference to others' opinions, we become free from the chains of social expectation. We no longer seek approval from the crowd, but instead, we follow our own truth and make decisions based on what is best for us. This freedom allows us to become more confident, self-assured, and resilient in the face of criticism. When we stop seeking validation from others, we stop giving them power over our happiness and our life's direction. We realize that our life is ours to live, and the only opinion that truly matters is our own. This Stoic practice enables us to pursue our goals with clarity and confidence, knowing that we are living in accordance with our own values, regardless of what others may think. Indifference to pleasure and pain. In Stoic philosophy, one of the most profound teachings is the idea of indifference to pleasure and pain. This concept might seem counterintuitive, as we typically seek pleasure and avoid pain, but Stoicism teaches us that both pleasure and pain are transient. Instead of allowing these fleeting experiences to govern our lives, we should maintain equanimity in the face of both. What does indifference to pleasure and pain mean? Indifference to pleasure and pain means recognizing that neither extreme should define your actions or emotional state. Stoics do not encourage the avoidance of pleasure or the pursuit of pain for its own sake, but rather they teach that neither should become the dominant force in your life. We should approach both pleasure and pain with the same level of detachment, appreciating the good when it comes, but not letting it overwhelm us, and enduring pain with resilience, knowing that it will eventually pass. For example, when you experience pleasure, whether it's from a delicious meal, a successful achievement, or a pleasurable experience, Stoicism teaches you to enjoy it without clinging to it. You should savor the moment, but understand that pleasure is fleeting, and attaching too much value to it can lead to disappointment when it ends. Similarly, when experiencing pain or discomfort, whether physical, emotional, or mental, the Stoics encourage us to endure it without overreacting. Pain, like pleasure, is temporary, and we have the ability to choose how we respond to it. By maintaining a balanced perspective, we can endure pain with dignity and without losing our composure. How can we apply this? When you encounter pleasure, whether in a social situation, through material gain, or a personal achievement, take a moment to enjoy it, but remind yourself that this pleasure does not define your happiness. Enjoy the joy of success, but avoid becoming overly attached to it, knowing that life's highs are always followed by lows. On the other hand, when faced with pain, whether it's a setback, an illness, or a difficult emotional experience, embrace it as a part of the human condition. Instead of resisting pain, focus on how you can respond to it with resilience. For example, if you face failure, rather than giving in to frustration or despair, use it as a learning opportunity and move forward with greater wisdom. Why is this important? Indifference to pleasure and pain helps us develop emotional resilience and inner peace. By not allowing either pleasure or pain to overwhelm us, we maintain our equilibrium regardless of the circumstances. This means that we do not become slaves to our desires or fears, and we are better able to navigate the highs and lows of life with a sense of balance and composure. This Stoic practice enables us to enjoy life's pleasures without clinging to them, and to endure life's challenges without being crushed by them. In this way, we can live a more stable, contented life, regardless of the ups and downs we face. In practice, when experiencing pleasure, acknowledge it and enjoy it, but avoid clinging to it. For example, if you receive praise or recognition, appreciate it, but don't base your self-worth on it. When facing pain or discomfort, don't resist it. Instead, focus on how you can respond to the situation. Whether it's a physical injury or emotional hurt, remind yourself that pain is temporary and you have the strength to endure it. Practice gratitude for both the pleasurable and painful moments in your life. Both offer valuable lessons, and both are temporary. Engage in daily Stoic practices like journaling or meditation to strengthen your ability to remain indifferent to the fluctuations of life's pleasures and pains. The freedom in indifference to pleasure and pain. By practicing indifference to pleasure and pain, we gain freedom from emotional extremes. We are no longer at the mercy of our desires or fears. Instead, we develop the mental fortitude to handle whatever life throws our way with composure. Whether experiencing the high of a success or the low of a failure, we remain grounded and focused on what truly matters, living a life of purpose and alignment with our values. This Stoic practice leads to greater emotional control, resilience, and the ability to face all of life's experiences, good and bad, with equal levels of clarity, strength, and dignity. The Stoic philosophy teaches us that true peace and happiness come not from external circumstances, but from how we respond to them. By practicing indifference to things beyond our control, whether they are the opinions of others, the pursuit of pleasure, or the uncertainty of the future, we unlock the ability to live with greater freedom, clarity, and resilience. Indifference does not mean apathy or passivity, rather, it empowers us to act intentionally and purposefully in alignment with our values, without being swayed by the transient forces of life. It frees us from the shackles of social expectations, the weight of unnecessary worries, and the emotional turbulence caused by external validation. When we practice indifference to pleasure and pain, we stop being controlled by fleeting emotions and experiences. We learn to enjoy the good without clinging to it and endure the bad without letting it break us. By mastering the art of indifference, we build emotional resilience, allowing us to navigate life's challenges with equanimity and remain grounded through both joy and hardship. In a world that constantly pulls us in many directions, Stoic indifference is not a call to disengage from life, but an invitation to engage with it more meaningfully. It helps us develop the inner strength to respond thoughtfully to whatever comes our way, allowing us to focus on what truly matters, our actions, our values, and our growth. By embracing this powerful principle, we are not just surviving, we are learning to thrive, with a calm mind, a strong heart, and an unwavering commitment to living a life of purpose.